Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, where faith, community, and ministry intersect in the unique context of smaller congregations. I'm your host, Tony Marr, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two men who are convinced they're a little bit more talented than I am.
That is right. I'm Robert Kell, one of those supposedly more talented guys, co-host and fellow small church leader. Together, we're here to explore the challenges, triumphs, and inspiring stories within the tight-knit communities that make up our smaller churches.
And I'm Bruce Montgomery, the one here to bring even more to the table than these two and offer a unique perspective to our conversation.
So whether you believe this talent hierarchy or not, you're in for a treat. If you're a pastor, a church member, or just curious about the world of leadership, you're in the right place.
Each episode, we dive into topics that matter to you, from innovative ministry ideas to navigating the unique dynamics of a smaller congregation.
So grab your cup of coffee, settle in, and let's journey together through the wonderful tapestry of small church life.
This is the Small Church Podcast.
I don't know why, but that felt like an eternity right there.
It really did feel long. And maybe it is long, and we just don't normally feel that way, but it felt really long today.
It did, and I don't know if I'm just, it's a rainy day, it's kind of dark, it's kind of
cool,
downcast.
Yeah.
I spent the last hour and a half before we started recording on hold, listening to elevator music, trying to figure out an issue, and I just kind of zoned out there during our intro, and about halfway through, I snapped out. I was like, whoa, this thing's still going. Yeah, you ever have those moments where you're driving and then you don't know how you got to where you're at, but somehow you made all the right turns?
Yes, it's that weird space of just that zone. I don't know. I mean, just muscle memory kicks in, brain memory, whatever, and gets you there, and you just go, man, I'm so thankful God was watching out, because I'm sure I stopped at every stop sign. I'm sure I did not cut anybody off, but you just get there and you go, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, here's the problem, though. Now that I'm getting older, I find that or maybe it's just that I'm not driving alone as much, but the other day that happened, I kind of zoned out, and all of a sudden, Amanda, my wife, started screaming at me, Tony, you just ran that red light. I was like, what? And I literally ran a red light. So just zoned out, going right through. So in those moments, maybe it's just that we're by ourselves. We don't know that we have run lights and stop signs, but we got where we wanted to go without any. So I don't know. Maybe I'm at that place where it's time for to wait my ability to be able to drive. I don't know. I don't quite think that I've hit that age yet where they need to take away my driver's license. But
well, you're younger than me, and I know people that are significantly older than me that are still driving, and no one's checking their ability, and I've seen them drive. And so you and I zoned out once every 30 days for a short drive is probably way safer than most of these people fully engaged getting from point A to point B. So
all of that to say, I kind of zoned out for a little bit during our intro there, and it was long. It gave me a nice little nap.
Well, hopefully that's not what we're doing to everybody else.
I sure hope not.
Hopefully as they're driving, we're not creating zone out for them.
They're doing the double tap on the right side of their iPhone or whatever it is to jump ahead 10 seconds.
If you've heard it once, that is one of my least favorite things about different streaming services and certain shows. Like sometimes they just won't do the skip on the show, and their intros like 60 or 90 seconds. Some people, like, especially in the 80s, they used to have really long, the theme songs and everything.
And they did all the credits before instead of after.
And it was such a big, long, drawn out process. And I'm just going, man, I don't love the fact that I can't. I mean, some shows make you watch the first episode of a season. So when you flip to a new season, they force you to watch the new intro, and then in the second episode, it starts skipping it immediately. But now, like, there's a lot of these, it's just every day, and I'm going, I know how many clicks it is to get through, but then occasionally they'll have a shorter bumper, and I'm like, and so instead of a 60 second, it's a 35 second, and I'll be clicking and going, I just skipped 20 seconds. Now you're trying to bounce back and get to the beginning. And so, yes, that jump thing is a very used part of my life, but I need people just to give me the chance to skip intro. That's my, yeah.
That's all the time we got for today, folks.
That's my complaint today.
That's all we got for today.
That's my complaint for today. There you go.
Yeah, we watch, if ever there's nothing to watch and we just need something mindless in the background, it's go to Peacock, throw on The Office. I know that you're not an Office fan.
I'm not, but
it says a lot about you.
It does.
But they have the skip at the beginning, and you can just completely skip the opening credits. Which sometimes I like to watch the opening credits because they make me feel good. They make me laugh. They make my heart feel warm. And,
So what's the one show you would never skip though? If you like, what's the one show you could never skip this? Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.
I'm probably Psych. Cheers is a really good one. I love the Psych theme song. Big Bang Theory would kind of be up there. One, it's short.
Never seen Big Bang Theory.
I think the Bare Naked Ladies did a really good job of that song and what they did with that. But it's hilarious. The guy that wrote that talks about he wrote it in the shower one morning. He's like, I just read this book. They told me to write this, and I sent it, and they literally took the first draft. So it was just crazy. But yeah, I think I'm Psyched, but Cheers is a really, really good one.
Yeah.
So, hey, we do not have Bruce Montgomery for this episode.
He's not with us today. No, Bruce is off getting so when you're retired, semi-retired as he is, your life is really based around very few things. You have the freedom to come and go, to schedule when you need to. And he scheduled pictures for a passport, which is actually Carol, his wife, scheduled the pictures for the passport. I was with Bruce yesterday, helping him figure out his technical difficulties that we've been experiencing. And for those of you that suffered through the episode a couple of weeks ago, you know that was something that desperately needed to happen. We had everything figured out when I left his house yesterday. So we should be good to go with Bruce and the technical side of things, and hopefully that will increase the listenability of our podcast greatly. Bruce is going to be out of town for the next 7 weeks, but he is taking his full recording studio with him, and as of now is planning on joining us every week when we record from Florida and Gatlinburg and wherever. I'm not sure why they're getting passports, because the places he told me they were going, you don't need passports for. But
you don't need a passport to go to Florida now?
Not yet. Not yet. That could be changing. We'll see what happens in November. But we'll see if Bruce makes it to every episode while he is doing his wide travels. I'm sure they have some other travel plans later on in the year that require a passport.
So my oldest kid is looking at getting his passport, and so we've been doing a little legwork on that. And maybe I totally misread the stuff, but I am 99% sure that you can get your passport photo like with your cell phone in front of a white wall and send it to them.
Yeah, you can.
And so I guess Bruce and them just want more fancy photos.
They want the nice. They're a different level of living than you and I are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you and I would do the cell phone on the wall. Bruce and Carol, they want that high end passport photography.
Oh well, I don't know. I've never been high end.
But you're also a photographer. I mean, so you know how to handle lighting. You could do a really nice passport photo.
Yeah, I'd open my big bay window and stand against the wall that's right behind it, and
get that natural lighting.
Yeah, and just snap a shot. So, yeah. But anyway, no, I was just wondering. I was like, I wonder if it's something that because there are things that I do in life still that I don't realize that you can do them differently just because I've done it one way for a long time. And so then somebody goes, you can do that like this. And I'm like, there's a part of me that wants to be a grumpy old man and just not do it that way. And, let's keep paper. Let's not let the robots control everything. But then I kind of go, man, I'd be really nice to not have to go get a professional shot, just take my cell phone, smile, no teeth kind of thing, and boom. No.
Sometimes you learn something new that completely revolutionizes your life. I am a avid banana eater. I love to have a banana first thing in the morning. It's my breakfast. It's my go-to. And, my entire life, I open a banana from the stem. And I read on Reader's Digest that is the incorrect way to open a banana. And it's a struggle to open a banana that way. Sometimes you might rip half the banana off like that if you've just come from having arm day at the gym, and and you'll just rip that banana right in half. And sometimes you mush up the whole top tip of the banana, and it's really a struggle sometimes opening the banana like that.
But monkeys open it from
the bottom. You just give a little pinch there and it peels right off. I read this in Reader's Digest, has changed my life, completely changed my life. It is amazing what just a small flipping the banana upside down can do. And now you eat your banana from the bottom down instead of from the top up, but it really doesn't matter because once it's out of the peel,
it's
the
just
same.
a banana.
It's just a banana.
So with a really poor effort of transition here, like it really comes into the fact that even in nature, there are animals and stuff who have a lot of insight to how things should happen, and when people do what they're gifted at and what they're really talented at, if the rest of us pay attention, it can encourage us, it can inspire us, it can help us to do things better as well. And that's kind of like volunteering
Robert
and
Kelly,
serving
did you
in a
just
church.
Segue from bananas to volunteers in churches?
I said I think it was poor,
That
but
was
I gave it a shot.
Nice segue. Great segue.
Because, I think there's a real truth to that. Like when we're serving, it really does inspire people. It moves people when you see somebody that is really inside of their gifting and that is really doing something. I think it's easy to watch. My 20-year-old, I think he's got a lot of talents, a lot of gifts. He's a really good like ministry mind because he spent his whole life in church, but he's a great musician. And when I watch him play and I watch him work, and I get the benefit too of seeing the behind the scenes, so I know what happens and what doesn't. I get to see him execute those things on Sunday, and I watch people go up to him and be like, hey, that was unbelievable, or hey, this was really good. And by the way, he would kill me. He never listens to this podcast, so he would kill me if he knew I was saying this. But I think that whole thought and idea of just sitting in your gifting inspires other people to want to use their gifts. So with that, the topic that you were kind of throwing around to us that we kind of landed on for this week is building a strong volunteer team in small churches. And I guess my first question as we start to dive into this a little bit is begging a viable option.
Well, I think we've touched on this subject in the past.
We have.
But we've never devoted an entire episode to it. And with so many small church pastors, leaders that I meet with, that I work with on a regular basis, I was thinking and looking ahead as to what topics we wanted to cover. This is the theme that just comes up time and time and time again, the lack of volunteers, even in small churches. I mean, almost every guy that I talk with, when I sit down, when I'm coaching someone, one of the things that I ask them, one of the first things that I ask them every week is, what are your greatest celebrations since we've last met, and what have been your greatest challenges? And time again, the greatest challenges are, I just can't find people that are willing to help out in a variety of ministry opportunities, from children's ministry to worship ministry to Sunday school ministries to even I've got one guy who said he's been having to go and do the yard work and the cleanup and stuff around the church because the guy who used to do it, they had a volunteer who had done it for 20 years, and he had some health issues that he couldn't do it anymore. And they can't find anyone else. No one else will step up to do that. And so guess who it falls on? And so he was pretty frustrated about that, adding another 2 hours out of his week to take care of the church and the grounds. And so it's something I know that you've been dealing with in some pretty major ways over the course of the last couple of months that has greatly impacted your church and some directional things with you guys as well. So I think that it's prevalent to probably the vast majority of our listeners out here. So hopefully we can give you some great insights and ideas.
Yeah, 3 things. And man, there was really good there. I want to come back to one thing, and I think something that we need to talk about a little bit later. And you can remind me of this is, even as a volunteer, how do you train your replacement? How do you train the person? Because you think about, and I don't have a clue, man. I'm not being offensive at all, because I don't always do the best job at this in certain areas. But if I did something for 20 years and I didn't bring anybody along that could do that, I mean, what a built-in discipleship model. What a built-in way to sit with people and to listen and to hear their story, and to be able to journey alongside their wins, their losses, their struggles, their successes. I mean, to be able to be discipling in that, and the go and make disciples part, the Judea, Samaria, like, it gets really easy to go to the furthest parts of the world, but we kind of forget sometimes our neighbor and that across the street. And I understand, yeah. Anyway, but I think there's some space to come back to that conversation a little bit. Yeah, again, this is just where we are. I don't. Some of you guys listening are going to be 10 times the size of what our church is, and some of you all are going to be smaller. I mean, we're going to be 10 times larger than you, and it doesn't mean anything other than we're just old. We've been around 10, 12 years now, and we've just been doing this a little bit longer maybe than you have.
Yeah, I think this problem is universal. It's not just a small church
Agreed,
problem.
100%. And so our church runs about 105, 110 people a week. And so in that, our children's ministry, we are designed to have 4 classrooms. So I'm just talking about this purely from children's ministry perspective. If we were in 2 services until just recently, and we went back to 1 service for a season, and really the biggest reason was volunteers. Not that we don't, half of our church volunteers, but they volunteer as door holders, as information desk, as coffee makers, as worship band, tech and sound. We do have a good number of children's ministry volunteers, but with 4 classrooms, 2 services, wanting people to serve twice a month, attend twice a month. And so on the weeks they serve, we're asking them to go to 2 services. We're asking them to attend a service and serve a service. And then on the weeks they're off, we're hey, just come worship, be a part, exhale, enjoy your time. It takes us, for 4 classrooms, 32 to 35 volunteers a month. That's a third of the people in our building. Half of our church is already serving. And now out of the 40% of people who are left that haven't quite found a place to plug in, maybe they're not believers, maybe they're not ready, or maybe they don't like children. I mean, I don't want people in children's ministry that don't like children, that don't feel called to serve in that space. And so we took this step back from, and by the way, we were only in 3 classrooms, so we needed 24 a month. We couldn't get that. And so we moved to 1 service. And so we need 12 to 15. And the goal is to get a main leader and a really good co-leader with them, that we can then start to put kids in student ministry, college students or whatever, that can kind of come along, learn the system, learn the structure, learn the importance of why we do what we do. Why do we have Bible verses in our nursery room that our leaders are praying over these kids and saying out loud and going through this stuff? Why do we have those things? And because it can seem silly. It can seem like, why are we reading verses to 2-week-olds? Well, I mean, nobody's bringing their 2-week-old in, but I mean, to a 1-month-old or whatever. But I just think there's a lot of things in that space that now, but you and I were talking before the show started. I mean, we're 1 week really into this 1 service thing, and we had 7 open chairs in our auditorium on Sunday, and so this isn't a viable option. My deacons and key leaders are going to be sitting in the foyer watching on a TV so that we can provide 20 extra chairs, because our auditorium can only hold like 5 or 6 more chairs. So there is this real struggle. And I also mentioned this to you before the show, and then transition back, and you can kind of jump in, and we'll see where we're at here. I've said this before on here. I have a real rhythm in our church that I can almost tell you the week that I'm on of which families will be there and which ones will not. And I've got a third of our church that, which I guess would be more than that, but a third of our church that attends 26 times a year. And And I listened to a podcast with a couple pretty respected guys. They're West Coasters, but they were talking about the fact that the vast majority of church people
Can't trust those West
You
Coasters.
can't, especially the ones from Nevada that are Dodgers fans.
Excuse me, what did you just say?
Oh, it's Nevada.
Excuse me? I've never heard of that place.
Nevada. But it's, you get to that space, and these guys are talking through this, and they're saying, here's the trends we're seeing in church. And they're like, they did these studies with Barna, and we did this here, and we did this. And they're like, so they're pretty respected guys in a lot of this stuff, and they're facing these same struggles. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what I'm seeing and where I'm sitting at. And then, you can jump in there, and because you attend our church some, and you get to see some things, and we can navigate through that.
Yeah, I love the fact that your church is so close to the Appalachian Trail.
Dude, I'm a redneck from the South. I'm just happy that I roughly know where Nevada is on a map. And how am I supposed to say it?
Nevada.
Oh, no way.
Nevada.
And I guess I'm supposed to say Florida as well.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, no, I get it. I'm, again, redneck from Alabama, dude. I'm just happy when words get close.
I think that with this being a universal problem that churches of all sizes are facing, there's some questions that I would like for us to try to explore. And you touched a little bit on some of this, that it doesn't matter your church size. It doesn't matter what your church is offering. There's a volunteer need. How can churches effectively communicate that need to where it doesn't become like the first 57 seconds of the Small Church Podcast that you want to skip ahead or you just completely zone out? Because I think that's the case in most churches that I just had a conversation with a guy this past week who is in desperate need of some volunteers within their children's ministry. Same, it's not even you, different guy. Could be you, but it's not. And they are literally putting the slide up every single Sunday, talking about it from the stage every single Sunday, the need that they have. He's incorporating it into his teaching whenever applicable. And it's been 3 months that they have not had a classroom that is critical to what they need because they do not have a single person to go back there. And I said to him, take a break from announcing it. It's a broken record by now. Everybody's tuning you out. Nobody hears it. You've said the same exact thing. You showed the same exact slide for 3 months now. It's not reaching anyone unless they're new. So take a break from it. And he said, but if we take a break from it, then nobody's going to know. I said, trust me, they know.
And nobody's doing it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's, man, this is going to be, I'm going to have taken a lot of notes for a lot of things. I'm definitely a leader that I actually see things very, very well and sometimes struggle in a space to execute all of them. And so I can very much tell you what to do. Do as I say, not as I do stuff. We have been in this rhythm of making some announcements. I mean, we don't do it every week. We probably do it once a month. We talk about the opportunities to serve. We don't talk about needs a ton, just like we don't take up an offering. We don't walk down the aisles with guns holding people hostage till they give us $1. I mean, we receive.
Maybe you should.
Maybe. And so we just went through a staff change in our church, in our side of our children's ministry. Up until September of 2023, I was bivocational, and our worship pastor had been the full-time staff member for like 10 years. He took another job with a ministry that serves in our area, and I went full-time and he went bivocational, and then we have a bivocational children's minister. She won Employee of the Year with the other job that she had. She's a fantastic employee. The struggle and the tension is she was very bivocational. She's been married 3 years now, so she's still pretty newlywed in life, has a 5-month-old kid, and her life got busy, as we all know, with different things. Amazing at what she does. So amazing that another church that is a much larger church in our area hired her to come in and do children's ministry full time. In that space, this is not ideal. And you and I have talked pretty detailed, and you've shot some pretty straight comments at me, not in a mean way. Tony and I have a very, very good relationship, and we talk really directly about stuff. And you said, Robert, this isn't the long-term fix for you. And I agree 100%. But my wife at this time, with the size of our church, with the people we have, and the investment that's available, she was the best person to take over our family ministries position. And so she has been in that role for about 4 weeks. And because she's a stay-at-home mom that does a photography, she works out of the house, she runs a photography business, does photos, mainly dogs and babies, taking pictures of them. And she has the time, because we homeschool our kids, to spend a little more time on Planning Center, to spend a little more time with emails. She has been able to, and we went back to one service, all of that has allowed her to be able to focus in and get 2 or 3 really committed leaders that have helped to be able to do that. It's just hard sometimes. And I don't know how to tell people, because I know Melissa, I know what her strengths are, and I know how to come alongside her. And so we talk about this nonstop. I'll call her as I'm driving from point A to point B. What are you doing? I'm working on Planning Center. Here's 9 questions. She came in this morning. I was working on some stuff, and she was getting ready to walk the dog, and she said, I have 2 questions. And both of them were about, here's what's happening in children's ministry. How do I fix this? How do I help with this? And so it's the same struggles that we have had for 10 years now. Just in a small church, it's just hard to find enough volunteers. And I don't know that I have a ton of great answers. One thing I would say to your friend, if I was talking to them, and this is one of those, I need to take a note and do this myself. Is it possible? Do you have an 11-year-old in your church that knows how to use an iPhone and CapCut or whatever that editing program is on phones, that could walk around one Sunday morning walk around for a month of Sundays and shoot 30 seconds of video 5 or 6 different times? They could put together a 60-second video out of those 7 minutes of footage that talks about the importance of the difference that the children's ministry has made in the life of a family, of a specific child, of a specific parent, and how that would go. Because when people emotionally get attached to something and they see that it's making a difference, I know this for a fact. I don't want to jump aboard a sinking ship. I have a wide skill set. You do as well. And it's easy for me, if I'm attending, to go, I could lead worship. I could lead student ministry. I could speak on Sunday. I could run children's ministry. I can make coffee. I can open doors. I'm a pretty likable person most of the time. But I don't want to jump aboard something. If you're begging for children's workers, I'm going, And so, and I have begged. I literally, about a year ago, said, guys, I normally say we have opportunities. I normally try and, make this all pretty. I'm just going to tell you, there is a serious need in our church. If you hate children, you're still not the person to do this. But if you have a heart for birth through 5th grade kids, and this is where God has gifted you, I'm telling you, He's telling you to take a step to get out there and at least volunteer once a month. And we got 0 people, even in that. Yeah. So I think that drawing the heartstrings, a good video can help.
Yeah. We've got a church. I met with their leaders last week, and I met with 2 of their leaders. They only have 3 key leaders in their church, that they're in the process of looking for a new lead pastor, a new minister. Very, very small church, a church that prides itself on their lack of technology. And their issue was not with children's ministry. Their issue was with, they still do a Sunday night service that we're able to help them with their Sunday morning stuff, and we're helping them with their search process of finding someone new. And if you are listening to this podcast right now and you are looking for a new ministry opportunity and you're in the East Tennessee area, please reach out to higherministries.com.
And you hate technology.
And you don't like technology. But we're able to cover things on Sunday morning for them pretty regularly. They've got one key leader that does everything, and he's a phenomenal guy. But we're getting ready to head into the summer, and he's going to be gone for a good bit of time, going to Florida. And he's the one who teaches.
It's not Bruce. Just so everybody knows, it's not Bruce.
He's the one who teaches their Sunday evening Bible study, their Sunday evening service, but it's a Bible study. And he said, I've been trying for 3 weeks to get one of the other 11 people who come to Sunday night to teach it while I'm gone for 3 weeks, and no one will. No one will step up to do it. And he said, how do I get someone to do it? They're just going to come and sit around and drink coffee and nothing's going to happen. I said, well, then let them come around and sit around and drink coffee and see what kind of discussion generates. And maybe that's what needs to happen there. But it's not always, something that's directed to children or students, or there are needs all over the church. And part of me wants to just say what I said to them, just don't let it happen. Just let it sit around and nothing happen. But the problem is there are certain ministry areas that are critical. They have to happen. You have to have volunteers. And when you don't have those volunteers, you end up having the pastor out mowing the lawn and cleaning the bathrooms on Saturday on what's supposed to be his day off, because it has to happen. And I actually said to this guy, so don't mow the lawn, let it grow. And he said, but then it's a detriment to the church, and I don't want to do that. It's not taking care of the house of God. And if new people come in, it looks horrible. They're not going to come. And my gut response was, then let someone else in your church see how bad this is, what a bad reflection it is, and maybe someone will step up. And he, being much godlier than me, said, I just can't do that. I can't bear to do that and let that happen. It has to be done. And if no one else will do it, then I'll do it. And my response is, well, then no one else is ever going to volunteer if you're going to keep doing it, because they see that it's getting done and they can't see the need. And so there's this contradiction there between we have to show the need, but at the same time, things have to get done. And to be honest, I'm not sure what the line is there, what the balance is there in that. We did a video one time when I was the lead pastor at a church, and we were in this same discussion of desperately needing volunteers for many different things, that we did a fun little video that showed me in all of those roles. And so, we showed me running around trying to make coffee and spilling coffee all over the place for our coffee ministry. And then someone said, Tony, we need someone in children's ministry. So me running back, and I'm in a circle and on the, colored carpet squares working with kids, and someone came and said, Tony, it's time for service to start. You've got to be doing worship. And so then I ran from the children up and grabbed a guitar, and I'm doing that. And then the sound's not right. So then I run back to the sound booth and putting the headphones on and doing that, and then it's back to children's ministry. And then we're out of coffee, so it's running to coffee. And then say, we've got a problem in the parking lot, so it's running out, throwing on the orange vest and guiding cars in for parking, and then handing things out of the brochure. And they said, Tony, it's time for the teaching. So then I had to run up on the stage and start teaching. Then children's ministry, and it was a hilarious, 45-second video that showed all this, and just was more to show all the things that go in behind the scenes that people don't often see, and one person can't do that job. And it was both to appreciate the people that we have in volunteer opportunities and to show the need that we had. But that's prompted me to say that I think one of the greatest ways to recruit new volunteers is by celebrating your current volunteers.
You said that, and I thought, man, that's a really good thought in that space right there. I mean, when you were talking, I heard that, and I was going, that's something I need to do. I need to do better. Sorry, I was going to let you continue, but I was agreeing with you.
No, I'm done. That's all I got.
I mean, it's one of those things too. You get so to kind of expound on that. Sorry, I know that was awkward for everybody, but I was encouraging a great thought, and then thought there was I should have just continued. You have volunteers who do not want to be noticed. They want to show up. They want to do their thing, and they want to leave. And if you bring them in and you try and say, hey, we just want to say thanks to Susie, because Susie is absolutely amazing with preschoolers. Hey, we run 2 services, and I don't know if you know, but Tom and Amanda, between every service, every week, take and go through and touch up restrooms and make sure there's toiletries and everything you need in there. They clean a mirror off because some of y'all floss in between the services. And and they did all of these things, and they get all this done. And when you walk into the second service, you probably think nobody in the first service used the bathroom, but that's not true. And the first service, when they show up, Tommy and Susie were here an hour before, making sure those things were ready. And so we just want to say thanks. And that's a hard thing sometimes to remember. It's easy to take people for granted. And I know I need to check myself on that and find ways that even if it's not from stage as much, I need to be consistently encouraging my volunteers and the people who really make ministry happen. Because, if you're listening to this and you're like me and you're the dude who, between 35 and 52 weeks a year stands behind a music stand or a podium or a pulpit or whatever it is you've got, and you teach, I'm not being mean. There's 1,000 people. There's probably 10 people in your church that could write a sermon. And I'm not saying you're bad at it. They may not be as good as you, but they could be 80% as good as you. But there might not be 10 other people in the church that have a heart to clean a toilet between services. There might not be 10 other people who really care deeply about investing in the lives of your nursery, your baby's room, and praying over in scripture. And when they do it, it's not just like, well, they told me to do this, but it is a thing that they have literally fasted during the week, praying over these kids and invested in and done, and they care, and they walk in and they have a smile on their face, and they have prepared. They know a lesson that's not even necessary because the kids don't understand. I appreciate what I do, and I'm thankful I get to do it, but I am much more easily replaced than that volunteer. And I think sometimes we just have to remember that. And this has been really good for me in prepping this to get ready for, what I can do.
So one of the things that I always took great pride in was helping people to find their unique fit. It's something that I still try to do through different tools is getting, to go back to good to great, find the right person in the right seat on the bus. And so working with people to really discover, what are your passions? What would you like to do? What's the area that we can get behind you instead of you getting behind us? Instead of us saying, here's a list of every opportunity that we have for you to serve. Can we plug you into one of these? It's saying, what's your passion? How can we get behind you? How can we launch you and support you in what you're wanting to do? How you're wanting to use your gifts, your passions, your abilities to serve and expand the kingdom of God. And maybe that's something within the walls of this church, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's an initiative, something that we can get behind you that's outside of the walls of this. But when we shift our focus from how can you serve us to how can we serve you, people feel more appreciated, they feel more valued. And a lot of times those things are something that's a need within the church. And a lot of times it works. It's a win-win for everyone. But I think it's switching that focus from how can you serve us to how can we get behind you and serve you and launch you into the ministry and the life that you're feeling called to and passionate about.
And I think, one of the things I was going to say in that really quick is all of us, every church probably has some version of a new members class or a get to know us, a 101, whatever you call it, at your church. And I think there's a really good space in there to, one, just ask, have people write down, what's your 3 areas of gifting. What are your 3 areas you enjoy serving? What's, or put a checklist like mark 1, 2, and 3. What's your favorite? Or, hey, number these 1 to 10 and what you would find, we have 10 areas to serve in the church, and 1 to 10, what's your favorite number 1? What's your least favorite number 10? And give them a short spiritual gifts test. And at the end of it, say, hey, based on this, you're a teacher and a hosting person. Like, you really fit a great like description of a small group leader in our church. Here's what that looks like. I'd love for you to partner with blank this semester and go in and sit alongside them and co-lead their group this year, and then next semester kind of get you into that, maybe into leading your own group, or just, however you word those types of things. But when you were talking there, I just thought, I know there's some opportunities in those spaces when you get a captive audience, people who are new to your church, getting those 101 new member, new here classes, and then helping people connect to the space.
Yeah, a couple thoughts I have on that. I think it's difficult with a lot of our listeners out there that when your church only has 40 people and you're maybe getting 2 or 3 new visitors a year, that those new visitor classes are few and far between, and they're, if you only have, it's hard to do a new visitor class when you only have 1 person. Lola, our show dog, is in full force.
Full force today. Yeah. She's making it happen.
She's staring at me right now. And we tried to get you to come in earlier, Lola, and you wouldn't do it. And now you're wanting in. But sometimes that's difficult to do in our smaller churches. And so it's one-on-one conversations with people, that when you have, and if you're the lead pastor of a church and you have a new guest who's coming in and you're not having those one-on-one conversations with them, that's a whole nother show, whole nother topic that we've touched on before. But in those conversations, I think that you're spot on, that it's figuring out what are they passionate about, what are they excited about. But statistically, we're seeing that the average dedicated American Christian right now, according to numerous studies by Barna Group, by Gallup, by Focus on the Family, is saying that the average American Christian is willing to only give 1.3 hours a week to the church now, which is down, from 4.5 in the 50s and 60s, down even from like 2.1 in the early 2000s. So now we're at 1.3 hours a week. So one of the big mistakes that I think we make in church is when we are sitting in a new members class or in a conversation with someone new, is jumping too early into the where can we plug you in? Because until they're fully invested into our church, they're thinking we're showing up on Sundays and that's about it. Even some of your most dedicated, devoted people are thinking we're showing up on Sunday mornings for an hour, or as you were saying earlier, 26 times a week. So they're not even at an hour a week. They're at half an hour a week.
Yeah. And we had a situation just recently, and man, I had so much respect and really kind of had to take a step back and think through. We've got a friend at church, and amazing, and their family is crazy plugged in. Husband and wife, 2 kids, and it's a second marriage for both of them, and so their kids are unbelievable, and they serve and they do so much, and they're a part of everything we do. They're in student ministry. I mean, it's the parents, like we buy food and do things each week. And small church, we don't have a ton of a budget, and so it's Little Caesar's pizza. It's not like we're cooking filet mignons on the Blackstone out back or something. But I mean, we buy some pizza each week, and many times, most of the time, that's something we pay for out of our pocket. And so there's families, and this family will chip in. They'll, I'll get a text message like, "Hey, so and so Venmo'd you a few bucks," and and it'll just say "for the Utes" and with a pizza sign out beside it. And he'll send those things, and they love serving, and they're so faithful and so committed. Well, in this transition, Melissa reached out to this husband and wife and said, "Hey, I've got these opportunities. your boys have served in the past. Would they be able to? And the response was, right now heading into summer, I don't know that that's the best. We get them every other week because they're with their other parent on the other off weeks, and they're not in church on those weeks. And we're really valuing sitting together, hearing the sermon, and exiting out and going and discussing that in that space. And they're like, with one service and where we're at, we're going to need to probably hold off on that thing. And I just thought, I don't think about sometimes what people are going through. And I mentioned this book a while back, The Comeback Effect, that was so good. And I have started doing these little short, like, I say short. The first one I did was like, but I didn't feel like it was a bad video. But I just take my iPad, I open it up, and I just talk for, I'm wanting to do 60 to 90 seconds. But this one was a little bit longer. And I just talked about the fact of that, you get to a place and you walk in and you go, I've got my junk, my stuff. Everyone else kind of needs to be prepared to just take care of me. But we forget sometimes when we go to open a door or when we check a child in, a family in children's ministry, or we're helping pour a cup of coffee, that family may have been fighting the entire way to church. They may have just got some really hard news about their kid that week, that, that their health is not good and they're struggling through that as a family. Their family might be on the verge of divorce. They might be having trouble on the verge of losing their job at work. I mean, there's so many things that could be happening, and I forget sometimes that even the really committed people have the same tensions and the same struggles. And in that space, how do we come alongside? And I think some of this is just where the discipleship process not happening the way it should have for the last 40 years. And I'm going to say maybe longer, but I'm only 48, and I don't really remember much of my discipleship process other than Sunday school before 8 years old. The discipleship process for the last 40 years just hasn't been to sit with people, to look at the practices and the ways of Jesus and to follow those and to be faithful in serving. Because like you said, I mean, I don't know that we needed church 3 times a week. That's a very American thing. But that Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, at that point in time, people were very committed. I mean, you had a group of people that were putting in 10, 12, 15 hours a week just to be at church 3 times a week, and then visitation and all the other. I grew up Independent Baptist, if you can't tell. But I think that's a hard thing. And remembering that our people, though, have these real felt needs, us getting into a discipleship relationship with them, and in that space, like you, and you've said this, and I think there's a touch of a difference, not in a bad way, of what you've said versus what I've said, but it's got to come through some genuine conversation over a cup of coffee or a Java juice or whatever it is you like to drink or eat or whatever, and just some time where you hear people's stories and that they get to know you. And when you get to know each other, people will want to step in and be a part. And that's what we've seen. As I've sat with people, we've had a lot of people plug in, just not in children's ministry. It just takes so many volunteers there. I don't know how to do that.
So back to your initial thing that you were saying a little while ago with sitting down, having the class for new attenders, or even just a one-on-one conversation, helping them to figure out what their gifts are, what their passions are, what their abilities are, what they're excited about. But then I want to go back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. I think rather than saying okay, great, based off of how you're scoring on this personality assessment or the spiritual gifts test.
Your Enneagram 7 with a 2 flyer.
Because you're an 8, here's where we think that you could fit in really well. I think that's really overwhelming for people that, hey, we were just coming here to find out more about this church, and now you're trying to tell me that, okay, we've got all of these different these places where you can fill a need for us. I think if we changed that conversation to, great, based on what we're learning about you, what are the things that really excite you? What are the things that keep you staring at the ceiling at 3 o'clock in the morning? What are the things that you would, if failure was not an option, that you would love to be doing, that you would do? And how can we get behind you and support you in that? And maybe some of those fit within the walls here of the church. And maybe they don't, but how can we as a church get behind you again instead of you getting behind us? How can we advance your mission instead of you helping to advance our mission? And maybe in us, what if as a church, our mission was to help our people advance their mission instead of them getting behind us? And it's a complete paradigm shift. It really is, I think, for a lot of churches. And I think that's great philosophically, right? That sounds really good on a podcast. And someone pulling over on the side of the road and saying, oh, let me write this down. But you've still got empty classrooms on Sunday mornings.
Yeah. And, for us, we've had service, like if we were in 2 services, we've had to like our older kids, our kindergarten through 5th grade, we had to take 1 service and shut that down. And I'll just tell you that created some tension because parents didn't want the parents who would show up occasionally at that first service. We had a few people leave our church over the fact that, like, hey, we were coming to the first service, and it felt like more often than not, we were the only kids in the room. And our kids were the only kids in 2 of the rooms, and we just needed to have more community. Now, we had a whole nother hour that had 20 or 30 kids in it, but trying to run it, we had a hard time getting volunteers, which led to not being able to do classes the way we wanted, which led to people shifting and moving, and then somebody who needed the first service because of work or because of life or just because our kids always got up early. I was at a church in Florida, the 8:15 service, and there were Sundays Melissa would be at that with a 4, 2, and 1 or 5, 2, and 1 year old, and would be at an 8:15 service because they were up at 6:30, 7 in the morning sometimes. And she's like, well, I'll go get this done, come home, fix lunch. And that was just how life functioned and went. And so, yeah, I mean, you're right. 100%. People have vacancies, and sometimes you're going, how do you do this? And I don't have great answers. I have some random thoughts, but yeah, you've got some stuff there, I think, though, that can help.
I just think one of the big problems is that people are innately selfish, and we're focused on ourselves, our lives, our family, what we want, what we need, and what we think that we have the ability to do. My wife works for Keller Williams Realty. She has a team at Keller Williams, and they do a thing every year called Red Day. That it's a big thing. They try to encourage all of their agents nationwide to come be a part of a community service project. And my wife she's in charge of that for our whole region here. So thousands of agents in our region here that she runs the Red Day for. It's coming up this next week. And they have, I mean, there are, I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say 4,000 or 5,000 Keller Williams agents in the Tri-Cities area here.
That's crazy.
And they will have maybe 40 show up for this day.
I was just guessing.
That's once a year. That's once a year. One time a year. They will have people that are some of their biggest agents that won't show up for it. And I know that you've got a lot in the real estate world with that number of agents. You've got a lot that are part-time. They're doing other things, but there are a huge number that's their full-time thing. That's what they're doing. They've known about this for months.
Even if 25% of them were full-time and they all came, there's 1,000 people.
1,000 people. Yeah. But they'll have, maybe 100 that'll show up for it. And because we think that we're busier than we are, think we have more on our plate than we do, because we are selfish as people. We've said that before. I think you asked me one time, what's the biggest problem that the church is facing today? And I said, we're selfish. And so we need to figure out how can we break through that. And maybe by turning the table to say, it's not about what you can do for us, but what can we do for you? It makes it about them, lets them see that we really are for them, that as a church, we really are for them. We want to get behind them, that just changing that shift can maybe help in that in some ways. I've seen some success in that, and so that would be an encouragement that I have. What specific things have you guys done in the churches that you've worked in the past that's been successful in recruiting volunteers? I know we used to do a ministry fair, where it was each ministry within our church would set up a little booth. They'd make their own big spiel to try to make them attractive and appealing to people. And then in between services or after service, people could walk around. You couldn't avoid it. If you were going to leave church, you had to walk through the ministry fair. And as you came in, you had to walk through it. So you couldn't avoid it. You couldn't just skip it. And there would be people there that would talk to you about the different opportunities. I think that's a little bit harder to do in a small church when you maybe don't have as many different exciting things like that. But what have you done that you've seen success in?
We've done some things like that, set up in the gymnasium, or set up maybe not quite as direct as you guys, where you had to go through it to get in, get out. We've had some things there. We've done simple stuff that has worked. Like we've put, basically a sheet inside of a bulletin or something at times. I mean, some of these are a little dated. I mean, a QR code on the screen that somebody could scan that has a list of things, and people will check sometimes. You get to then call them and sit down and have a personal relationship. The thing that I have always done well, and here's the struggle, I can still do this, but I'm not the leader of every ministry. And people won't always respond to me in this role. Man, this is going to sound arrogant. I had a friend one time working at a church, and he walked up to me. We were on staff together, and he just said, "I don't know how you do." I said, I don't understand what you mean. He said, "You stand in this lobby of a 1,500 person church, and literally you have a genuine," and this is what you've talked to me about this, and you're like, this is why you would be a terrible door holder, because you want to go have deep conversations with people. He said, "But I watched you one day, and you had a conversation about fishing. You had a conversation about cooking. You talked to somebody about sports teams that you don't even know much about, cricket or something random." He's like, you made every one of those people feel like that you were. I said, "Well, one, I was engaged." He said, "You're just telling me like that you were engaged and you were there." And I said, "Well, one, I was. I love learning. I love hearing people's stories." I was like, "But two, I've just been really fortunate to do a lot of things. And in that, when I sit with people, if I can talk with you for 5 minutes, I can kind of tell where you would be best placed." I hate to say it that way. That sounds like where you would receive the most joy in serving and helping you move to that place. But I can't do that for every ministry. I mean, I hate to say it this way. If the worship team needs more people, the worship pastor is going to have to develop a little bit of that skill set. And he can't just be a crazy good musician that has an amazing band and people go, "I want to go faces," and like hop up on stage and, play the Salvation Is Here bass solo. It's good that I chose a 20-year-old song as my reference as to do here. And so, I mean, it's not the thing of like, we don't really have a lot of lights and stuff like that. Some of our campuses do, but it's not like, if our children's ministry wants people, I can't just go and have an individual conversation with everybody in the church. The children's ministry leader is going to have to find a way to do that. You're going to have to go out and equip. And so as a leader and a pastor, the best thing for me to do is sit with my staff and sit with my team, the volunteers and the leaders that head up these ministries. And that's the two things I've seen. Me personally, when I say just a youth pastor, when I was a youth pastor and that was my only role at the church, I could sit with people, see them, and me personally bringing them into the ministry. That was the easiest and best way I've ever seen it done. Secondly, now I need to do a better job of sitting with my key leaders. I've got about 5 people who schedule the 5 areas of who work with and serve, and I need to do a better job. Again, I'm really blessed though. Like we've got 4 deacons right now. We've got 2 more getting ready to step on. I mean, I've got a ton of people who are very committed to what we're doing, and while it feels a little empty in some spaces, we are really in a good space health-wise.
You've got some listeners right now that are cursing you because they're saying, "I've got 2 guys that are both in their 90s and don't show up for any meetings or do what to do."
And my deacons show up to, we're a part of a network. There's 3 campuses, and we're a church that plants churches. Our churches will never be more than 250, 300 people. It's just the goal is to grow to about that size and send out 100 people to go plant, or 50 people or 75, whatever it calls for. we're 3 churches, and once a quarter we meet. Just my church, our lead team does. Once a quarter, the entire lead team, so every church, every staff member, every deacon, all get together at one campus, and we meet. We share wins. We pray together. We talk about what's going on and what's coming up, and then once a quarter, most of my deacons and staff get the night off, and it's like a key lead team that's just the campus pastors and a couple of deacons. It's about 8 of us, 6 or 8 of us in a room. And they attend like crazy. I mean, they just show up, they sit, they care, they pray with other deacons, they meet with other people. And so, we're having a hard time in children's ministry, and I'm not denying that. I mean, I'm saying that out loud, but in our family ministries, our birth through high school, we're struggling. But inside of this other space, man, God's doing some really beautiful things. And so I'm trying not to get distracted by the hard. And I'm trying to look at my other leaders and go, how do we help, how do we encourage and help and come alongside? And so we're working. It's just been a slow move.
Well, you can tell that this is a problem because we've rambled on about this for over an hour. And so we had 2 more sections on this discussion that we're needing to get to. So this is going to have to be a 2-parter. So let's with our last couple minutes here, let's try to recap some things and give some real practical insights and maybe advice for our listeners out there that are saying, okay, we've listened to you talk about the need for volunteers for over an hour. What are some really practical steps that they can take to recruit volunteers?
I mean, I'm going through this same struggle right now. So I think that okay, here's the 2 things I'll say. 1, you're not alone. I think you need to understand that this is something that's happening around the world. Let me say it this way. I can't guarantee around the world, around the United States. I don't have enough connections around the world. You probably have more of those than I do. But for me, what I see around the United States, this is something that's happening in that space. When we see a problem, we see a concern, the way to solve that is through prayer. I believe that the church has well underutilized practices that we have of Sabbath, fasting, solitude, community. Where are you serving outside of Sunday morning? I guess I'm talking really to campus pastors and lead pastors, teaching pastors at your church. But where are you serving? Do you have a ministry that you're connected with? And I know you're mowing the yard, and man, if you're listening to this, man, what a blessing you are. I don't have a yard. We don't have a parking lot. We're downtown. So I would, but like, where are you serving and setting that example? So there is a need. There's a concern across the country about this, a struggle. I think that when we have those moments, Scripture calls us to be before the Father and praying and talking to Him about that. And secondly, how are we setting that example? And then my third thing would be, and you said this, and I thought it was just really, really beautiful. How are we having conversations with people, hearing their stories, and seeing how we can meet the needs they have and how we can be here for them, not just what can I get from you?
Yeah, I love that. All right, well, that is all the time that we have for this episode of the Small Church Podcast. If you want to continue on this discussion, we will continue this next week with or without you as we talk about how you can train and equip your volunteers once you get them committed to being a part of an opportunity within your church. And then how can you keep them? How can you retain volunteers so that you don't burn them out, you don't push them away, keep them going for the long term? So you definitely want to tune back in next week as Robert and I continue that discussion on keeping and retaining and training up your small church volunteer team. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Small Church Podcast, and encourage you to like, subscribe, follow wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We also would love for you to be a part of this conversation. We'd love to hear how you're handling recruiting volunteers within your church. So shoot us a message, hireministries.com, or find us on Facebook at Hire Ministries. Again, thanks for listening. Tune in next week. Have a great rest of your week.